Hey guys, I'm Tammy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sewing an off-the-shoulder top. So I thought I'd take you along with me and show you how you can recreate this yourself at home. It's going to be really easy and simple to follow, and if you're a beginner, this is going to be a great project for you to start with. For this tutorial, I'm going to use this really lovely viscose fabric. It has a really pretty floral print all over the fabric. It's really nice and lightweight, and this is a great fabric to use if you're a beginner. So if you want to sew this top and you want to use an easy fabric, I recommend using a cotton, a viscose or a linen. So you'll need a few different measurements to make the pattern pieces for this, but what you need to do first is get a measuring tape, and you're basically going to put it around your shoulders and just measure quite tightly what that number measures. So that is for me 40 inches, right about there. And I'm going to call that measurement my shoulder circumference. We'll also want to measure our bust. So wrap the tape around you and just measure the fullest part of your bust. So mine is 33 inches. And then the last measurement we'll need is our full bicep. Obviously take off your jumper if you're doing this properly, but I'm just showing you roughly how I do it. So you're going to wrap the tape around the fullest part of your arm, which is there. So mine measures 12 inches. But once you have those measurements, we're going to draft our pattern pieces. So for the bodice, we're going to need 2 rectangles, and the width of the bodice is going to measure 25 inches in my case. And how I got to that number is you take the shoulder circumference and divide that number by 2 and plus 5 to that number. The length is completely up to you. This will mean how long the top is on you. I decided on 20 inches. So this is my final bodice piece, and I'm going to cut 2 of these out of fabric. Once you've cut that out, we're now going to cut away the armhole pieces in the bodice. So fold one bodice piece in half, and the side that has the 2 raw edges, that's where we're going to work from. So this part is the side seam, and this part is the folded fabric. We need to calculate our armhole width, which will be our full bust divided by 10. That gives me 3 inches. So I'm going to mark here 3 inches from the end. Now we also need to mark our armhole depth, and we get that number by taking our full bust measurement and dividing that number by 4. That gives me 8.25 inches. I'm going to mark that number down from the top of the bodice. Connect these markings together by drawing a rectangle, and then create a very loose curve at the bottom of the rectangle. This is our armhole. Now we're going to cut this out with scissors and repeat the exact same process for the other bodice. You'll want to keep the spare armhole cutouts for the next step. Now to create the sleeves, we're going to do a really similar technique. So the width of the sleeve is going to be your full bicep measurement, and we're going to times that by 1.5, and that's given me 18 inches. So the width of the rectangle is 18 inches, and the length again is up to you. That's how long you want your sleeve to be. I've made mine 22 inches. That is what one sleeve looks like. You're going to want to cut out 2 of these. We're going to fold the sleeve in half widthways, and this is the raw edges side and this is the folded edge side. Taking that spare fabric piece that we got from cutting out the armhole on the bodice, we're going to overlay that onto the sleeve and cut around that shape. Repeat this exact same step on the other sleeve. So I've just cut out my pattern pieces, and this is what they look like. So this is what the bodice should look like. You can see the armhole detail on either side, and then that is the length of the top. So you should have 2 of these. And then this is the sleeve. It looks very similar to the bodice, but this is just narrower. So that's what the sleeve looks like. So the first thing we need to do is place both bodice pieces right sides together. So it looks like that. And we're going to pin the side seams together. So this is one side seam down here, and this is the other side seam. So we're going to pin that on both sides and then sew it with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and overlock or finish the raw edge. So I've just sewed the side seams of the bodice, and this is what it looks like if I give you a close-up. So it's nicely sewn, and then if I give you a close-up, you can see I've also overlocked the edge. Obviously I used a overlocker, but you can use pinking shears or just a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine to get the same effect. And we're going to do the exact same steps with the sleeve piece. So I'm going to fold that in half. So this is the armhole piece, and these sides that are together is the side seam of the sleeve. And we're going to sew this in the exact same way we just sewed the bodice. So you should now have a bodice piece where the side seams are sewn together, and then we've also got two sleeve pieces where the side seams are also sewn. So take the sleeve piece and we're going to turn it right side out. I'm going to place this inside the bodice. When we're placing the sleeve into the bodice, we're going to want to make sure the bodice is the wrong side facing out, and we're going to align the sleeve side seam with the bodice side seam. I'm aligning the bodice side seam with the sleeve side seam first, pinning that in place, and then I'm going to follow along the armhole and align that on both front and back pieces. This is what one armhole should look like now that the sleeve is inserted. What we're going to do now is sew along the entire armhole edge using a 1 cm seam allowance, and then finishing that on the overlocker. So I've just sewn the sleeve to the bodice, and that is what it looks like. If I open it up, you can see that's what that looks like. And I've also finished the edge all along the entire sleeve piece. So this is the top of the bodice. This is the entire neckline area where the sleeves are joined. And we're going to create an elastic casing all the way around the neckline so we can insert elastic. How we're going to do that is we're going to take the top edge of the bodice, so the neckline, and we're going to fold over the top edge down by 1/2 inch towards the wrong side, and again by 1/2 inch. And we're going to press that all the way around the entire neckline. So I've just pressed the entire neckline of the top, and that is what that looks like. So I basically just folded it twice and pressed it all along the entire neckline. And then I also just got some pins to hold it in place roughly. Now we're going to sew along the entire edge of the top, really close to that edge. But what we have to remember is to leave a 1.5 inch gap at the back of the top. So the front and back of this top are exactly the same. So just choose one side and just leave a 1.5 inch gap at the back. So I've basically just mark this with a pen so I know where to start and stop my stitch. So I'm going to start at this edge here and go all the way around the entire top and stop at the other edge here. So I've just sewn the entire edge of the top, and this is what the neckline looks like. And again, I remembered to leave a 1.5 inch gap at the back so I can literally push my finger through that hole. What we're going to do now is figure out how much elastic we need to put into the casing. So for this project, you're going to need a long piece of elastic, and this is 1 centimeter wide. This is what that elastic looks like. It's nice and stretchy, and we're going to stretch it around our shoulder. So it could be as tight or as loose as you want. I recommend it being quite tight. So if I just show you from the side, this is my shoulder, and I've just wrapped it around my entire body to be the comfort that I want. So where the end of the elastic meets with the rest of the elastic from this point, I'm going to measure how long this is and cut that out. So I've just cut my elastic out, and that measured 28 inches. So this is what it looks like now that I've put it over my body. It feels nice and tight. We're going to take a safety pin and we're going to pierce the end of the elastic. So it looks like that. Make sure to leave a bit of a gap. Don't put it too close to the end because it might break when we're putting it through the top. So now I have my safety pin on the elastic. I'm going to show you how we're going to put it through the top. So now I've got the other end of elastic through the same hole, and this is where that original elastic is that we put in. I'm going to hold it in place and take my safety pin out. And then I'm going to align the edges of the elastic. So those are the two elastic pieces together. And I'm going to take that to the sewing machine and just sew that in place. So that is what the elastic looks like now that I've sewn it together. And what we're going to do now is basically stretch out the entire neckline to evenly distribute the elastic. So literally just stretch it out. And you can see the neckline is really nicely done. What we're going to do is pull the fabric taut and we're just going to sew the opening closed at the sewing machine. So that is the neckline finished. If I just turn the top right side out, you can see our top is really taking shape. So that's the neckline. And then we've got our sleeves here. What we're going to do now is actually create an elastic casing for the hem of the sleeve. It's going to be really similar to how we did the neckline. So this is the end of the sleeve hem. And what we're going to do is fold the fabric towards the wrong side by 1 centimeter and again by 1 centimeter. And we're going to do that around the entire sleeve hem. So this is what the sleeve looks like, and again I folded it all the way along and pressed it in place and then used clips. And then I've also marked a 1.5 inch gap at one section of the sleeve. So the same as a neckline, we're going to sew it all the way around close to the edge and just make sure we leave the gap at the back. So now that the sleeve hem is sewn, we're going to calculate how much elastic we need for the sleeve. So this is personal preference, but what you want to do, so we're going to take a piece of elastic and it's not cut yet. I'm going to wrap it around my arm, maybe around here, so it's not up to my wrist, but it's around here. And I don't really want the sleeves to be super tight, so that's how I'm doing it. So I'm leaving quite a bit of a gap. And let me see how much that measures. So for me, that measures 9 inches and I'm going to cut that. And now I've got 2 pieces of elastic and that's going to be what we put into the sleeves. So again, this is really personal preference. I don't really like it when the elastic is too tight around my arms, but you can definitely make it tighter or looser depending on your preference. So doing one sleeve at a time, we're going to use the exact same method of putting a safety pin at the edge of the elastic and we're going to thread that through the entire sleeve. So this is what the final sleeve should look like. Again, I did the same process where I just sewed the opening closed. And this is how our top is looking. What we need to do now is just hem the bottom of the top. So you can hem the bottom of the top however you like. What I'm going to do is use my overlocker to finish the edge all the way around. And then I'm going to fold it over once towards the wrong side and sew that in place all around the bottom of the top. So that is the final top completed and this is what it looks like. I really love how this has turned out. Let me show you what it looks like on. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I sew this really easy, simple top. It's definitely a great project if you're a beginner. Let me know in the comments if you're thinking of making this and I'd love to see what you create. You can find lots of easy, beginner-friendly sewing patterns on my website, which I'll leave a link down below. I'll also leave some links to different types of fabrics that I would recommend to sew this top with. Make sure to let me know in the comments if you have any other projects you'd like to see DIY tutorials for. I'll see you in the next one.